Welcome to the Bloom Stitch Along. This is just the introductory video. We're just going to talk about the pattern and the materials and just a couple easy tips to help you get started. If you already know what you're doing, you probably don't need to watch this video. You can just catch up with us next time. All right, so welcome. Hopefully you found the pattern on my website. There's actually two versions of the pattern included in here. And how do you know what to do? Which pattern do you want to stitch? And it's really up to you. I mean, it's the same pattern, excuse me. It's just slightly different stitches in some places. In some instances, I just used fewer strands of floss. So it's the same stitch. It's actually for the leaves here. You can see they're more thick here and more thin here. And that's just, a preference. One is not more correct, one is not more difficult. It's just different options. So stitcher's choice when it comes to those things. I will be demonstrating both versions as we go. Okay, so if you grabbed the kit, you're going to have the pre-printed fabric like this. You're going to have your floss and you're going to have hoop and some needles. If you don't like the fabric printed like this, please email me and I will just include some white fabric for you. If you find this fabric too thin, you can always double up and hoop up a layer of white fabric behind it. You don't need to do anything to this to get started. If the wrinkles are bugging you, you can always do a hot iron. Sometimes I spray with water to get out the really cranky wrinkles. Yeah, you just need to hoop up and get started. So that's easy. Note, obviously, this is permanent on here, these guidelines. So you want to cover anything with your stitches that you don't want to see in the end. All right. Excellent. So if you do not get the kit, if you're just going to get your own supplies, you're going to need to transfer the pattern yourself. So here I just have some very well cut cotton fabric here, just like what you would use for quilting. There's tons of it at the quilt shop. Sometimes they hide the solids like this because the pattern stuff is more fun. But yeah, if you can't find it, just ask, someone will help you find it. So what I did is I just cut out the pattern like this, and you can actually, with white, it's super easy. Look, you can just see through it. You don't even need a light board. But what I like to do is hoop up first, because what can happen is if you transfer like this, let's say you draw a circle on here and then you kind of move your fabric like this, like it'll warp a little bit. Like with flowers, it doesn't matter too much. It'll really matter like if you have text or something, but it's just how I like to do it. So I hoop up first, and I will show you how I like to get mine really tight. So this is just the hoop that's included. They are not very fancy. They do the job. I usually frame all of my embroidery in these hoops. The bigger ones that are this cheap quality can have problems with tension. If you're experiencing that, you can invest in like a fancy hoop like this one. I sell those on my website. Or you can add another layer of fabric or bind the hoop to help you get better tension. But you can see I did not have a problem getting tension on this. Okay, and this is just one of those cheap ones. So, but it depends. Like sometimes there's lemons. So if you get a bad one, I'm sorry. Let's see what we can do to fix it. So I just go around a couple times if I need to. Just pulling the heck out of it. So it's tight. So in fact, I can even just draw on here. There's no give at all. I'm going to use, to demonstrate, I think I'm going to use this blue guy simply because I don't think I'm actually going to stitch on here. That way I can actually use this fabric later. But I'm just going to trace. I know I hold my pen funny. No need to leave comments. Thank you. So this is like a water soluble pen. So basically you would stitch over it, and then when you're done, you'd give your embroidery a bath. Oh, speaking of baths, Oops. So that's why you might want to, I don't know where I was going. That's why you probably shouldn't talk while doing this. And that's also why you might want to use a soluble or non-permanent pen, because if you mess up, you know, you either got to go with it or start over. But in this case, you can just wash it out. Okay, but what I was trying to say before I messed up was if you do use something like this, it means you're going to have to get your work wet when you're done. So you want to make sure that your floss is color fast, that it's okay to get wet, that it won't bleed all over, okay? So always test first, all right? Even though it looks like it's fine here, test it first, because I don't want to get in trouble later. Like, I don't want you to spend all this time doing your embroidery and then you get it wet and it turns out that the floss bled and the pen didn't work right or whatever. Always test first. Other cheaper options, you could just use a pencil. I have a hard time with a pencil because I can't see so good, so the lines are too faint for me. Or just a pen, like from the bank, whatever. If you use something like this, obviously it's going to be permanent, so you'll need to go slow, be careful, and then cover your guidelines with your hand embroidery work. Okay? So that's that. Here's a little close-up of this guy. You can see it has a notch, so you can tighten it with a tool, a screwdriver. So that's cool. I mean, these are great. A good investment. So sometimes I'll do my work in here and then switch to one of these just to finish it. So that's that. Also, you're going to want some scissors. They don't need to be unicorn scissors, but that can be fun. So real quick about getting started and getting some floss going here. If you're brand new, obviously this is the floss number down here. It'll tell you. That'll match up with your list of materials. You're going to pull from this end. You'll see a little tail. I pull about 18 inches. Or you can measure like from the tip of your finger to your elbow. So at this point you can go ahead and get on your needle. You'll notice the needle's eyes, it helps to lick for sure. The needle's eyes are kind of long, they're not like a circle, so it can help to kind of press, like to flatten the tip of your floss there before you needle up, just like that. So what size of needle though? So this guy here is like a 10, okay? It's like so tiny. And then something like this, whoa. Actually, this could probably go inside. Anyways, this is like a 1, okay? So if you have like a full strand of floss, it's going to be a lot easier to get through something like this than this. But you will see something small like this is going to leave just a tiny hole in our fabric. Something big is going to leave a fat hole, okay? Now, usually with most fabrics, you can just kind of like fix the fibers and close up those holes, okay? So it's not a huge deal. It's just something to keep in mind. So the rule of thumb I kind of go with is, you know, choose a needle, the smallest needle I can get away with that doesn't cause me stress when I'm trying to get my thread on there, okay? So if I can get away with a 5, I'm going to use a 5. If that's causing me stress, I'll use a 3. No big deal. One little trick I'll show you. So in this pattern, there's going to be some times where we're not going to want to use a full 6 strands. We're just going to want to use like 3. So here you can see 6 strands. The easiest way to separate these is to pull out one at a time. So hold on to what's left and just go 1, 2, and 3. So I have 3 in each hand now. Those ones are all separated. We'll just leave them there. Some people actually separate their 6 strands before they use it. I don't do that, but some people have a better time with that. Say for like satin stitch, because you can see the thread kind of naturally has this twist in it, which is going to create texture. If you smooth these out so they don't have that twist, you're going to get a more flat lay of your floss, which is preferred usually when you're doing something like satin stitch. So here is our 3 strands. So let's say I have a needle and I'm having a hard time getting a full 6 through. What you can do is make an extra long piece of floss, go down to just 3 ply, then you'll have an easier time here. And then when you double it over, what's this? 3 plus 3 is 6. So then you're actually stitching with 6 strands. So that's an option. So what's the best way to anchor your floss when you're first starting? When you already have some stitches worked, I just like to anchor onto the previous stitches. That's a mess, but that's okay. I'm comfortable with it. If you like yours to look more precise, more perfect, please do so. So I just come in and, I'll just anchor on the previous. So you can just do like 1 pass through, or you can do 2 if you're really paranoid. That's cool too. Just like that, nice and anchored. And then I would just start stitching. Okay. Now, if you don't have stitches already, because you're just starting, or maybe you have stitches way over here and you want to do some stitching over here, what are you gonna do? I'm totally okay with you just tying a knot in the back. That's probably what I'll do. Just like this. Easy peasy. And then start. Some people are not okay with that, and that's totally fine if you don't want to do it like that. I think it's okay. I think it's like the simplest way to get started. Another thing you can do, if you're not into that, is you can come up and leave a tail like this. Hold it with your fingers, and then what you're going to do, let's say you're just doing some stitching back here. I'm going to try to make it so that the back of my stitches actually go over this tail. That wasn't the prettiest, was it? There. See that? And then I'll hold the tail over here so it kind of happens more naturally. It's a little clunkier, right? Just to not have to do a knot. Oops. Speaking of knots, excuse me. Excuse my knot. Okay. Here we go. P.S. When we're actually doing the stitch along, I will not be holding the hoop like this because it is probably making you car sick. I apologize. I'll be using a clamp. So this is just to better show this anchoring, because when I do use my clamp, it's a little tricky to turn my hoop over. Also, I don't usually use a clamp when I'm stitching. I like to be able to hold my hoop and rotate it. So it's definitely not a requirement. You don't need a lot of materials to do hand embroidery, you guys. You don't need all the fancy equipment, I promise. So notice I am not anchoring my floss. Okay, let's try that again. I just started stitching and kind of forgot that I was demonstrating something. That happens. So that's another option for you. Okay, go ahead and grab what you need to get started. Next time we're going to start working on our greenery here, our leaves.